Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today to this webinar about banking connectivity and payments challenges for the various fund industry stakeholders. We're excited to have you here as we dive into the key banking connectivity and payment challenges faced by the various fund industry stakeholders. Through our client interactions, we've gathered valuable insights that we'll be sharing with you today, along with solutions to help navigate these challenges more efficiently. Here's what we have lined up. We'll explore the major challenges fund administrators face, from retrieving bank statements and managing multiple banking entities to the risks associated with manual processes. We'll showcase how automation can improve payment workflows, account aggregation, capital calls, and cash concentration, with a look at SEPA direct debit and fee collection solutions, so you'll have a live demo. We're going to also want to be this webinar to be engaging, so we'll be running a live poll to hear your thoughts and experiences. Stay tuned for a special look at our latest features, including an exciting preview of our securities reporting solution. There will be, obviously, at the end, a Q&A session. We'll open the floor to your questions, so feel free to drop them in the chat throughout the session. So let's focus on today's reality. Over the past months, our team has been engaging in deep conversations with fund admins and financial service providers, gaining first-hand insight into the key challenges they face when it comes to banking, connectivity, and payments. Today, we're excited to share these market observations with you, because if you're here, chances that you're facing similar pain points. The reality, one of the most critical challenges we've observed is the difficulty in retrieving bank statements and managing multiple banking entities. So fund admins are often forced to log into different banking portals, manually extract transaction data, and reconcile accounts across multiple platforms. This process is not only inefficient, but also highly prone to human error, from incorrect data entry to missing transactions, leading to costly mistakes. Beyond inefficiency, this manual handling of sensitive financial data also introduces significant risks. The lack of automation increases exposure to fraud, internal mismanagement, and compliance breaches. With legacy systems and manual workflows, teams face a higher likelihood of processing errors, unauthorized transactions, and operational blind spots that bad actors can exploit. In an industry where precision is non-negotiable, these risks can have serious financial and reputational consequences. So this is the what we gathered in terms of information. I'll move on to the impact of such. So these inefficiencies don't just affect day-to-day operations. They have a direct impact on critical fund management processes, including capital calls, sweeps, and liquidity management. Any delays, inaccuracies, or security breaches in these areas can disrupt cash flows, create compliance challenges, and ultimately impact investor confidence. At the same time, end customers, fund managers, investors, and institutional clients are demanding greater transparency, automation, and security from fund admins. The expectation is no longer just about managing fund effectively. It's about leveraging technology to ensure speed, accuracy, and risk mitigation in every financial process. So this is, again, what we collected in terms of information. And what we wanted to begin with, it's to start with a quick feedback on the questions and the answers shared before this webinar, followed by an interactive poll, as I said, and Stefan will be the person in charge. Stefan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jonathan. So as Jonathan just mentioned, indeed, we wanted to give you an overview of the little feedback we collected. So as you saw, we shared with you a little questionnaire where we wanted to evaluate to what extent you were facing certain difficulties or pain points in regards to banking connectivity topics. So we came up with 3 questions, so which were how many banks you're currently managing, how complex are your current payment operation, and how often is manual intervention actually needed due to payment system limitations. So the answer we collected were quite straightforward. So in terms of the number of banks currently being managed within the operations and the actors that we are actually talking to, basically range, you see here basically 4 quarters evenly distributed, but basically overall the average number could be located between 15 to 30 plus. Obviously this depends on the size of the place. We have been talking to players who have over 100 banks connected, but overall you could say that between 15 and 20 is the average range of actors and the number of banks they actually do have to manage, which then tends to result in some complexity due to size. Now, when it comes to the complexity of managing payment operation, the answers were quite straightforward. So 2/3 of our respondents mentioned that it was somewhat challenging to manage these type of payment operations, which clearly to suggest that complexity is still a reality in that topic, which then brings me to the last chart where we asked basically the number of manual intervention needed, where the answer was like, okay, 38%, so roughly 40% mentioned that it's quite often and quite time consuming, while 50 mentioned it's occasionable. So if you tend to aggregate those 2 answers, this kind of translates into basically a significant number of manual intervention that is still involved in those processes, and suggest that those processes still are time consuming and can be prone to error. So this is what we collected from this little feedback and little questionnaire we shared with us. And in order to keep this webinar interactive, as Jonathan said, we wanted to just quickly quick start with a little interactive poll where we wanted to basically come up with some answers we collected from certain surveys and what the market in general shared with us and from basic surveys. So we wanted to share this with you. So we'll start this little interactive poll to see if you have the same perception as the market does. So the first question is, based on your opinion, how many Luxembourg-based firms still use manual processes for managing liquidity? So now you should have a little pop-up appearing, asking you to answer to those questions. So please feel free to do so. I'll give you all a couple of seconds to answer this question. Okay, I see we have 21 responses, so I believe everyone has answered. Okay, and I can see here that basically 81% indeed responded that 50% actually are still facing issues, which was actually the correct answer. So overall, indeed, the answer based on Alfie's annual report was that 50% of Luxembourg-based firms are still using manual processes to manage liquidity, which suggests that basically half of them still rely on manual intervention, and kind of confirms our previous results that manual processes are still a reality in this topic when it comes to banking connectivity and payments related issues. Second question is the percentage of Luxembourg asset services struggling with tracking cash balances across counterparties. So again, you should have a little pop-up showing up. Okay. So I see almost all of you have now responded. So basically I see that roughly 55% of you answered 60%, while 41% said 40. The remaining one went for 20. And the correct response was 60%. So this number comes actually from Deloitte's Luxembourg survey from 2023, which basically suggests again that tracking and retrieving statements remains quite an ongoing pain point for most of asset services in the industry due to complex banking connectivity. So managing those processes is complex, which is why tracking and retrieving balances is quite a pain point for most of these players. Now, fourth question is the percentage, again, of asset services in Luxembourg planning to invest in automation for capital call processing. So here in this case, we want to really focus on fund-related processes to have your opinion on those types of questions. Okay, almost there. I see 18 responses. And okay, this one is slightly more distributed. So I see that half of you responded 70%, 25% 42, 10% 35, and the remaining one was the 5%. So again, the answer here was that the numbers of asset services planning for automation based on Deloitte survey was again 70%. So basically we notice here that fund-specific processes require quite a high level of automation, as quite a high significant number of players consider this as an area for improvement, which is what we'll be showing you in a minute. We wanted to improve those processes. So basically fund management related processes are quite a pain point as of today, which is why we are trying to tackle this actually. And final and last question, the percentage of Luxembourg asset services struggling with cash concentration processes. Okay, almost there. So thank you very much all for being quite responsive. I see that everyone answers and correct. So basically I see here most of you, 70% answered that 40% are still struggling, while 14 mentions only above 20%. So again, correct answer was 40% are struggling with cash concentration processes. Again, we are focused here on the fund management processes, and this tends to underscore the need for more efficient liquidity management solution to optimize cash flow and operational efficiency, because when it comes to those processes, we still observe a lot of automation in those processes. So now that we moved on and tend to focus those questions on fund-specific processes, let us move on to a quick introduction of our LYNKS platform, which we'll be demoing you in a minute. So as a quick reminder, we first wanted also to give you a brief overview and a quick diagram of what LYNKS is, how it works, and how what it does. So here in this diagram, you see our LYNKS platform in the middle. The platform is managing payment workflows. Again, the multi-bank account management, so acts as a bank single gateway, has also embedded risk management features, and then the industry-tailored features that we are trying to improve as raised by those two questions we just mentioned. So the platform runs these processes while being connected to a set of banks. So we manage, so what you see on the right-hand side of the chart is basically the banking connectivity that we manage, and which we are trying basically to relieve our client from. So as we mentioned, banking connectivity is quite a difficult topic. It's hard to manage, which is why we're trying to relieve these pain points from our client. So we have a Swift connector. We are considered as a supervised entity by Swift. We have our own BigCode, which is how we can actually connect to a multitude of banks, but not exclusively. We have also other means to connect to banks, either via eBIX or SFTP. So we are quite agnostic from this standpoint. And we tend therefore to manage the whole banking connectivity through our platform. And then what you see on the left-hand side are basically the clients using our platform. So our clients typically range from insurance players, asset servicers, so ranging from depository bank, fund administrators, or fund managers, but also non-financial industry. And basically what we try to do is connect our clients' internal systems through our platform, through the banks, to really ensure straight through processing, to ensure that all the data flows through properly and that all the information relating to bank information statements is properly retrieved and simplifies the daily workflows of our clients. Having said this, let me now move on to the demo of the platform, which will probably give you a better overview of what it is, what it does, and how it could potentially assist you. So now just give me one little second to share my screen again. Up. Up. There we are. Okay. Now again, you should be able to see my screen. So you find yourself now on the LYNKS platform, and first page is the authentication place. So here we want to really enable our clients to authenticate themselves through multiple ways in the platform. So you see we can reintegrate existing authentication methods that our clients use internally. So typically Microsoft, LOGS Trust, or whatever they might be using. Typically all clients have already existing authentication methods in place, and we tend to reuse them to simplify the integration of the platform within their existing system. So I'll be now logging into the platform through my single sign-on credential. And the first page that I'll be landing on is the dashboard. So the dashboard will give me an aggregated view of what's taking place within the solution. So overall, you have total balance day -1. So basically a big overview of what's coming in terms of money, what's going on, what is planned. I have this high level information. You have also bank account position, which are aggregated, for instance, per currency. You have information here in regards to credit transfer, meaning the payments, what is planned for today, what is pending signature. I have an overview over that. Same logic for counterparties. So the system also enables you to manage all the counterparties from whom you are sending money, to whom you are sending money to or receiving money from, and you can also manage them. So you can also have an overview of how it stands at this level. You have a high level evolution on cash flows per account, history of credit transfers and the various statuses, transaction overview, as well as the possibility to add some widget, because we tend to work in a co-creative manner with our clients. So if they want some specific widgets and charts reflected there, we can also add this. So this dashboard first gives you this aggregated view of what's taking place within the solution. So one important specification as well is that each user logging into the platform has specific user rights that are being assigned to him, so that he's not allowed to do anything. So obviously, as all user management system, you are basically allowed to do a certain set of tasks. And to that extent, when you log in, you have those rights and you can see what you are supposed to be seeing. Second important specification is that the platform is what we call multi-tenant, meaning that you can actually manage multiple entities, which is quite relevant for the players we are servicing, often in the fund industry, fund services, who have to manage multiple funds, multiple SPVs, and so on. So they can actually juggle from one entity to the next to simplify the management of those entities. So far you see that I'm in an entity called Manco1, and I can then find information about the bank accounts listed in that particular entity. So you see here, I have all the accounts which are part of this entity. And if I now go into a specific account, for instance, the bill account, I will have information about that particular account. So the history of the evolution of the balance. I will have also all the statements related to that particular account. So those are all retrievable, exportable in the format of your choice. And if the system, which is often the case, is connected to your internal system via API, you can obviously retrieve them and inject them in your system to perform additional reporting or additional calculation based on what you wish to perform. Coming back to the accounts list, you also have an additional possibility to group those accounts. So for instance, here, if you're depending on the granularity of what you want to perform, here for demo purposes, as an example, we decided to group them as per fund. So you have fund 1, fund 2, fund 3, and those accounts are grouped. But depending again on the industry, on the place that we are servicing. Sometimes it can be geography, special purpose vehicle. Again, you have this granularity to basically manage the account and structure them in the way you see fit. And those things can be entirely be done by yourself through the settings section. So you don't need our delivery team to assist you with that. It can be done straight from an administrator working at your company. Now, again, coming back to the multi-tenancy feature, if I want to switch now to a second entity, for instance, AIFM2, Alternative Investment Fund 2, you see I will be landing on a second environment, which has a specific dashboard and has specific bank accounts as well. So if I go now on the bank account section of this environment, you will see that, okay, I also have all these accounts from this environment, which are this time grouped a bit differently. We call them AIF1, AIF2, AIF3. The idea again being for you to group the accounts depending on the entities, depending on the clients that you are servicing in the way that you see fit. You also have the possibility here on the transaction history side to retrieve all statements. May they be initiated from the LYNKS platform or from third-party systems. So for instance, if you initiate payment from a third-party bank, the payments will be retrieved at this level as well. Now moving on to the payment section, credit transfer, you have different options that come to you at this stage. So when it comes to generating a payment workflow can be initiated from multiple ways. Either it's done straight from the platform by clicking here on New Payment, where you can upload a file. So in the format of your choice, so typically it will be exported from one of your internal system, and then through a drag and drop, you can upload the file and have them reflected there. You can also create a single payment straight from the tool by defining an ordering account, a beneficiary account, the amount, the currency, the type of payment it is, the communication, and so on. So that's for a single payment. So you have this possibility to manage this at this level. You see also here that when I selected a beneficiary, it is active. So before initiating a payment to a counterparty, first you need to approve that counterparty in the counterparty management section, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But this is again a risk mitigation measure we put in place to avoid any type of fraud cases, or at least enhance the security from this standpoint. Now, that's one way of initiating a transaction, so meaning you can do it straight from the platform, but considering that most of the players we're working with and our clients already have existing systems from which payments are initiated, you also have the possibility to integrate that with third-party systems. So here, I'll give you the example of an integration with SAP. Where, considering that we have clients who work with SAP, we wanted to reflect that. So SAP being an ERP system, they would often have cases where people would be preparing payments in third-party system, then having people validating them and checking that everything is correct, and then finally sending it off to the signatories for final approval and signature. So imagine here that you are in this third-party system, may it be an invoicing system or an ERP, you can start basically preparing the payment in this environment, in this ERP, verify that all is fine, and then by hitting a pay button, the batch payment is being pushed into LYNKS. So the idea here is really to showcase the possibility for you to basically integrate LYNKS with one of your existing internal systems. So you see here, I have a batch payment that has been pushed. So I see my whole batch of transaction that comes from another system that has been reflected here. And you see it has been grouped SAP 6th of March 2025, 1224. So I have the information because you obviously also have the possibility to group payments based on the activities or the use cases that you currently have in place at this level. When you then go into a specific transaction, you then have more information about that transaction, meaning you have the ordering account, the counterparty, the amount, the various stages, creation stage, authorization stage, transfer to the bank, execution. You see here that again, for each payment, you also can define dedicated workflows, meaning depending on the amount, the ordering account, the use case, you can define how many people should be allowed to sign the transaction, who should be in charge of validating, and this can be defined. So you see here in this case, this payment only requires one validation. It has multiple people who can actually sign it. but it's entirely up to you how you want to define the workflows based on the internal use cases that you might have. You can also attach documents, invoices, or whatever, and you have an audit log reflecting the different stages of a transaction. Coming back now on my whole batch of transaction, if I want to now process it, you see that I can select my batch and a set of options are offered to me. So typically now I'm in a demo environment with admin roles that pretty much allow me to do everything. But if I was now, let's say, a CFO or head of accounting and was only in charge of approving, verifying that the payments are correct, I could check them. And once everything is okay, I would hit the button, send for authorization, and then it would go back to the signatories. In this case, I will straight sign them because I'm also a signatory. And in this case, I will thus authorize the transaction. So I will have a pop-up here appearing, asking me to sign. In this case, we're actually going to sign with the LYNKS app that we developed and whose purpose it is. So now, unfortunately, you might not be able to properly see it, but I just got a notification on my phone inviting me to sign the transactions here at this level. So I see my 7 transactions, which I can approve. And the reason we developed this app is that we saw that a lot of our clients are basically managing multiple accounts as managed, but by doing so, they also have to manage multiple tokens ranging from LYNKS Trust cards to all the tokens they have from various banks. But through the LYNKS app, they can actually sign the transaction from multiple banks through a single app, through a single tool, which also simplifies the process, especially when you have beneficiaries or signatories rather, who are maybe not present. This simplifies those processes as well. Now, if I now go back on the transaction, you see that the transaction has been executed. All stages are through. In the authorization stage, you can see that has been signed by me. And in the audit log, you can see that I signed it on the 6th of March, now at 12:26. So that's for the whole set of payment workflow. So as you can see, all types of workflows can be managed. It's really entirely up to how you have internal processes, and we can make this fit in this process. Going back to counterparty management, so we have here different options. The idea being here again to be able to manage all the counterparties that you have in your system. So again, here the idea is to increase the level of risk control you have on your counterparties. As I was mentioning before, each payment you want to make needs to first have a counterparty that is approved in the system. So if I take this specific counterparty, you find the information about that counterparty, meaning the details, the account numbers, the history of transaction that has been made, and a risk level. So you can assign a risk level to a specific counterparty based on your internal risk matrix, how risky you might consider a counterparty. And again, depending, for instance, on the risk level, you can define different types of workflows for the payment who could be made to that counterparty. You also have here then the section KYC screenings. Oops. Sorry. Where we basically have a tool in the back, so screening the counterparties. We integrated tools such as Dow Jones, LexisNexis, or Refinitiv, where basically each day, each week, depending on the frequency of what our clients wishes to do, the screening is run on this entity to notice if potentially the entity is being flagged on a sanction list or not, which would then increase its risk level and potentially require additional verification before making a payment to that transaction. Again, you can attach documents to the payment as well as provide an audit log to every change that is made to a counterparty. The risk management section is the one that actually enables you to manage all the screenings, but overall you have this possibility to really tie and give a compliance dimension to payments, so potentially also involve your compliance team in the payment workflows overall. Moving on to the reporting section, you have here really a possibility to export in the format of your choice all types of reports of bank statements, account balances, and so on. So the history of transactions, balances, and so on. So what you see here is just a summary, but basically all the data points that you have in the transactions can again be retrieved via API into your systems for an eased reporting. So what I just showed you are basically what we consider here into the platform as the core modules, meaning the one that enable you to perform what we would consider the basic tasks of the platform. However, now moving on to what is more related to the fund industry, we have a whole set of fund management and cash management functions, which I'll be deep diving now in a minute. So for instance, to begin with, we have the capital call section. So hence the question we asked before, and where we saw that 70% now of players wants to automate the process of capital calls, right? We have this section that helps give clients a more user-friendly approach to capital calls. So we have been talking to certain clients where we saw that basically the way they're still managing it today is that when capital calls are triggered, they collect all the money from investors in some collected accounts. So basically pooling accounts where everything is aggregated, and then they perform the tracking through Excel files where they have to check who has been paying what and so forth. So we wanted to a bit simplify this, and which is why we came up with this feature. So the way it works is that typically clients, again, still leveraging internal systems such as Yardi or eFront for those type of processes, will be initiating a capital call from those systems, importing the file, and then have this reflected on this page. So what is reflected, you will have then the expected amount, what is expected for this specific capital call, a creation date, a due date, the total balance, what is expected, and then you can track the collection of this capital call. So for instance, in this case, you see that the due date for this capital call was the 4th of March, but today we are the 6th, so we are running late, which is why we have a red line here saying that, okay, we have an issue, we are running late. So you have here the various tranches you can see here. So the system will perform an automated reconciliation based on the amount, based on the reference, based on the name of the investor, on who has paid and who has not paid, which then simplifies interaction with the investor to potentially collect the missing amounts. Moving on, we also have the non-reconciled transaction. So here it's a feature that we also developed to simplify reconciliation, meaning that if the investor, for instance, combines two payments together or makes a mistake in the reference, makes a mistake in the amount, the system will recognize that, okay, the amount is not correct, the reference might not be correct, but it looks close to what was expected for this particular capital call. And then the internal teams have then the possibility to perform a manual reconciliation and say, okay, this amount has a little mistake, but I can still reconcile it at this level and say, okay, for the investor, Steve Franklin, the amount that we actually can reconcile is this one, and then it will be finalized and reconciled into the transaction. So this gives you this overview to simplify the tracking process of the capital calls at this level. Coming back, this is like for a delayed capital call. However, if you have a pending one, the logic is quite similar. You see here in this case that we have a capital call that is expected on the 10th of March. So we are still on time. You can see on the chart who has paid at what moment, but we see that for those two investors, the payments are still pending in a similar logic. And you can also aggregate this via investors or via tranches, so you can see what tranches have been paid, what investors have paid, and what is missing from whom. Finally, I presume you got the logic, but overall, if everything was collected, then you have then a complete capital call where everything was collected in due time, and you can then proceed to proceed to the investment and communicate that to your fund so that they can proceed with the acquisition of whatever investment they want to perform. So that's for the simplification of the capital call processes. Moving on to the cash management, so that's also one of our latest feature. It's the cash concentration processes. So here it's really about automating cash movements across accounts. So different options are here available. So what we saw by talking with asset services and fund managers is that often at the end of the day, in the weeks or month, they have to perform movements across accounts, typically zero balance automation, so emptying accounts from one account to the next, or custom balance automation. So what we wanted to do here is, instead of having them to do all these payments manually, create automations and put them in place for them to not have to do this manually on a daily basis. So in the context of a zero balance automation, meaning you want to empty an account, for instance, at the end of the day, the process would be that, okay, person can select the account that needs to be emptied at the end of the day, select the account to which the money should go, then basically define the frequency at which it should be done. Should it be done on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? When should it start? At what time? In what time zone? Because considering the different location fund might operate in, it's also relevant. Then they can review the whole process, which will be summarizing the source account, the master account. And then when everything is set, it can be sent for authorization. So a manager can then approve that this automation process can be triggered and performed on the predefined frequency. Same logic then for custom balance. So the case I just showed you was a case of a zero balancing example where we want to empty an account at the end of the day. But in the context of a custom balance automation, the logic is similar. You can select one account or again multiples and define a target account, but this time with an upper threshold and a target balance, meaning we also had these cases with client where they said, okay, this account should not go above 1 million euro, for instance, but should not go under 500,000 either. But if it goes above, then the money should be sent elsewhere. So the idea is to keep always the account within a certain threshold. So you can define the upper threshold, you can define the lowest threshold, the target balance, again, the frequency, the date, the hour, the time zone, and so on. Review the automation process and then send it again for authorization to have it approved and then launch the automation process. Canceling this. And then on this page on the list, you can review all the automation processes that you currently have in place. If I select one, I have then information about the process, so I can see when it has been created, from what's the source account, what's the master account it is sweeping to. I can follow the source account balance, how has it been evolving across time, the history of transactions as well. Again, an audit log for all the actions that have been performed on that particular account. You then also have the cash pool. So typically those are all the target accounts, but most importantly, you also have the maps. So the idea here is really to be able to give you an overall overview of the different processes that you have in place. So you see here all the accounts that are feeding a target account, which then sends, for instance, to a third master account. And you have the possibility to see all these sweeping processes in a map. So you see here, for instance, that the Spurcase account has an upper threshold of 100,000 euros, but the other ones are only need to be cleared, so have some zero balancing automation processes in place, and they are basically all sweeping to this bill account, who then goes to a JP Morgan account. But this helps our client having a clear overview of what's taking place on what frequency. So this gives you an overview of this cash concentration processes. As you saw from our previous survey, is quite a pain point as well, and can require quite a level of automation, which is why we wanted to assist our client with this process. Finally, we also have what we call a fee collection process. So this is similar to the capital call, but and let's say in an opposite way, where basically through a SEPA direct debit logic, you have the possibility to collect account from certain accounts. So you see here, the arrow is on the other way. So the idea is that in this process, what you will be doing is actually collecting money from different accounts. So in this context, you see here, I am collecting money from 38 accounts. I already collected from 19, and I want all this money to be sent to my Spurcase account. And then you have, again, the possibility to track all this, to evaluate what is pending, what has been collected, and potentially what has been missing, for instance, in the context of insufficient funds on the account that has been, for instance, charged. So this gives you the overall overview of the platform. Now, last important section is as well the user and group. So what we want to do here is really be able to give as much flexibility as possible to our clients, because people come, people go. Sometimes user managements can be complicated, especially when it comes to signatory rules, because if you're managing, for instance, LYNKS cards, sometimes it can be a bit complicated to retrieve the cards, the authorizations when people come and leave the firm. So we wanted to give as much flexibility to give our clients and manage users into the platform. So if you look now at my profile, you see here I have all the details about my own profile. I see the authentication methods I am allowed to use and log into the platform with. And I see all the group memberships. You can put people in groups which have their own specific rights and authorization levels. So you can directly, when someone joins the firm or leaves the firm, assign them to a specific group. And then underneath, see all the access and permissions that they are actually being granted to. Same logic for the signatory rules. And again, an audit log, because as soon as you make a modification to the rights that are being attributed to an individual, this should be logged, and you can also see this at this level. And again, you can also export it at this level. So high level, the purpose here is to give you as much flexibility as possible to manage your users, but not only, you also have this section here with the accounts. So when it comes to accounts grouping that I was mentioning before, you can do this straight from the platform at this level. Same logic for the signatory rules, payment categories, transaction and currencies, and counterparty monitoring. So overall, if we had to summarize the platform, what we really want to do is give a shift of control from the banks to the users to enhance this overall experience of the platform. So I gave you now this quick / large overview of the platform, what it could do. What I'll do now, I'll stop the demo and I'll move on to second poll, where we basically want to collect your feedback on what you just saw, meaning that what is most relevant to you. Okay. And here we are. Okay, so based on what you saw, so which of the following areas do you consider maybe most critical to your operation? So we give you an overview of multiple features. So we were wondering, based on what you do on a daily basis, based on what your operations are maybe facing as current pain points, what would you consider as most critical to your operations? Okay, I see that almost all of you have responded. Okay, which is positive. So I see overall, I don't know if everybody sees the result, but more than half of you said all of the above. So we understand that you are indeed facing most of the pain points that we raised. And we also have the second one coming up, like the efficient cash and securities reporting, as well as the streamlined payment. So, okay, this clearly aligns with our market feedback. So first of all, retrieving properly cash and securities statements, as well as having streamlined payments, are clearly one of the major pain points that our clients are facing today. So thank you for your feedback. And second question was, which feature do you think would provide the greatest value to your clients? So here we are more oriented into a client servicing dynamic, considering that you have your own clients, and maybe how you could provide them with additional services that they would consider as valuable. Okay, thank you for your response. So I see, okay, more than half said again, all of the above, with then a priority for, again, the cash and securities reporting, as well as the automation of fund processes. So this, okay, tends to also align with what we saw before. So that's quite positive. So thank you for your feedback to that regard. Now, as time is running, we wanted to basically also give you a quick reveal, an exclusive introduction to actually a latest feature, which might probably also be relevant to you, which is the securities reporting. Because so far, what we have been showing you are like the possibility to retrieve statements and balances from cash account. But considering that our clients mentioned that securities are also a key pain point for them, we now developed also the possibility to have securities reporting in scope. So let me just give a quick switch up. So hope you can see my screen at this level. So as you see here, we developed, you saw here before, the cash account section, but now we also will find here as well the securities reporting section. So what we introduced now is basically the possibility to have an aggregated view of all your securities. So if you're again into a specific tenant, for instance, Vanguard Wealth Management, you will have an aggregated view of all your securities for that particular environment, with the possibility to have as well a currency distribution depending on what assets the currencies are listed in. You have this consolidated value at this level for 44 accounts, for instance, and then underneath you have all the accounts, so the safekeeping, the depository accounts for each of them. By clicking on one, you then have the information of that particular depository account, the evolution, the total balance of that particular depository account, how it has evolved over time based on all the assets contained in that account. So you will then see all the securities reflected in that account, with the holding value, the number of units of securities held in that account, the current price and valuation reflected, price type, source, as well as then also the history of the latest statement retrieved for the particular security. Underneath, again, similar as for the cash accounts, you have the possibility to retrieve all the statements related to the securities of that particular depository account. And going back then to the bank account section, if I deep dive into what we call the portfolio, you have the possibility to see here all the securities held in this environment and the number of safekeeping accounts those securities are actually reflected in. So that was a quick glance of the latest release that we are actually releasing in a few weeks. Moving out now to the last part of our webinar is the Q&A. So I would suggest maybe now we can release the microphones. If anybody of you has any questions at this stage, we will be happy to answer them. So I don't know, maybe we can release the microphone access.
You can go through the chat section also if you want to drop a message. I invited you to do so during the webinar, but we've been asking a lot from you, answering questions, polls. So if you do have any question, please feel free to raise the hand. That's one way of doing it, or drop a message in the chat. Right, there's a question that came from the audience about the list of banks that are connected. So roughly today we have a bit more than 50 banks. So we're following the requirements of our clients to connect banks. We're doing it, as Stefan mentioned, we're doing it through SWIFT mainly. We can also alternatively use other means to connect to the banks. But we always follow the requirements of our client, and it's very easy. Again, based on what Stefan was introducing, we use our own bit code. So it is an exchange of keys, RMA keys with the banks that are selected. And then there's the paperwork to put in place, if I can put it this way. So there's the POA to put in place, but it's very straightforward in terms of process. So we consider that with the banks that are currently connected, we are already covering over 70% of the requirements of the industry. Obviously, there are other players that we're engaging with, which are asking a connectivity far above these numbers, which is something that we're currently also ongoing in terms of process. So onboarding new banks. And this is a straightforward process that is put in place. Try and pick other questions. Stefan, have you seen the others?
Yes. How long does it take to connect a group of banks potentially across a couple of EU countries? This typically depends on the banks, but on average, takes couple of weeks. So basically we have to set up a power of attorney between the banks, ourselves, and the clients. And depending on the reactivity of the banks, it varies can be quite fast. Sometimes when the bank is slightly less reactive, can be a tad longer. Nevertheless, on average, it takes, I would say, between 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. There's also a question about the benefit of using Finologee. So it's not the exclusive way of doing it. It's indeed a way of moving faster. So it's leveraging and it's mutualizing the costs, obviously, but we can also host the bitcode when required. That was the answer to the question. And then there's a question around responsibility, if there is any issue with the payment. So again, the POA is very clear here. So it's the client or your client that is giving access to the account, and the tool LYNKS is there to trigger an order. And so the responsibility ultimately is either from the client that is initiating the payment, or from the bank that is misinterpreting this order. If there is a problem within the transmission of this information, obviously there's a contractual framework, an agreement that defines the responsibilities that could also be in certain extreme cases on Finologee's side. Okay, so
are only banks based in Luxembourg able to join LYNKS? No, through a Swift connector, we are virtually able to connect to banks worldwide, which is already the case. By the way, just for the next question, I'm informed that you can actually unmute yourself. So if it's easier for you, feel free to unmute and ask the questions orally. And also, okay, I see Francois asking, what is the benefit of using our Finologee BIC? I guess.
Yeah, I believe we previously answered this question.
Yes, indeed.
Hi, can I just ask a question? It's Alison from JTC. When you come to sweeping funds, there was a section you showed where you can sweep funds from accounts at either end of day, whatever. Who determines the rate of that? Because obviously you're dealing across currencies here. How tight is the bank that you're remitting the funds from? Would they determine what that spread would be? Is it a tight spread? How close are we to market?
So basically, again, you have the agreement with the bank in place. I believe it would be defined by the agreement you have with the bank. Typically, in this case, we apply the rate that the bank applies. Indeed, so we don't have any influence on that part. Obviously, it's the bank. The tool allows you to put rules in place, automate these processes, but it would be based on the agreements that you have in place with the various banks.
Okay, great, thank you.
There was a question from Nadej, handling cancellation and callback for payments. So how does it look like on the portal? So once you've triggered the payment, you can cancel So showing you, I believe Nadesh will have to do a dedicated session to show you exactly, because reconnecting to the platform to do that is going to be a bit cumbersome. So the other, we can, in any case, we can only cancel this payment before it's actually sent to the bank. So this is also why we have this process in place of validation, prior validation before transferring it to the bank. On our side, just to be clear, that the platform, the tool, manages the authorizations, the validation and signature, and once this has been validated and signed, it's sent to the bank. So the only moment we can actually cancel a payment would be to do it manually if we were to do anything after it's been sent to the bank.
I think we missed a question as well here on our responsibility in case of issues with the payment.
I covered that one. I covered
it. Okay, my bad. Okay.
All right. I believe, I know there's still some questions coming in. Thank you for that. So in theory, there are no banks you cannot be connected to, although I guess some locations could be more complicated to connect exotic countries from François, indeed. So virtually, we could connect any bank. You're absolutely right. Obviously, the devil is in the details. Some banks can be announced as SWIFT, but not completely SWIFTed. So indeed, in some marginal cases, we could face issues, but we'd still have fallback solutions here to exchange files with them via various means, meaning SFTP, host to host. And we also have in place partnership with external providers who do data transformation. And they have options of also converting other formats, being Excel, XML, even PDF, into something that can be actually used by the platform. So this is a module, external module, that can be also plugged into the platform. Very useful when it comes to depository, custodian, securities, accounts reporting. All right, I think that...
yes, there's a question from Alexander, UBS Luxembourg. So yes, regarding your securities section, do you have or will be do you provide in the future the opportunity to load or to input securities settlement instructions with third-party brokers, or is it only for securities trading what you are providing today?
So this is something that we are exploring currently, indeed. Again, we like to also work in co-creation mode when it comes to specific modules. So to be very transparent, the securities part was triggered by one of our clients. It was a request from them, so we started exploring that. So there was one option which was actually for life insurance companies that are working with several custodian banks. They needed to collect data from securities account from numerous numbers of banks. So that was one requirement, but there's also from other ones where we started exploring precisely what you were asking for. This is part of the approach to working co-creation mode, or to put on the roadmap when we see that there's a requirement on the market. It's indeed giving you a precise timing there is a bit difficult, is a bit challenging for me today, but please feel free to drop me a message and we can discuss that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Right, I see that we're just on time. A last question, and then we'll let you go and have lunch. Okay, so that was just it wasn't a question, it was a remark. Thank you very much, Francois. Appreciate your encouragement. So first of all, thank you to all of you for also being very interactive and providing some questions and providing also the answers to the polls. It's very useful for us, and it helps us a lot improve the platform and the approach. We will keep in touch. We will keep you posted with the latest evolutions. We have a release cycle of 6 to 8 weeks. So if you're interested, please feel free to drop a message and to sign up. We will keep you informed with all the new features, all the new functionalities that we add to the platform. And thanks a lot, Stefan, for the presentation. That was very useful. And thank you, everyone. We'll keep you posted.